Hey guys, tonight we're heading straight into the blistering heat of a forgotten drought, where the air feels like dry parchment and the King of Israel is not exactly handing out lemonade. You've just woken up in the time of Elijah, and spoiler alert, this is not going to be a spa week. There's no AC, no cold drinks, and absolutely no sympathy from the weather. Your job today, march up to King Ahab, look him in the eye, and declare that no rain is going to fall until you say so. That's right too. The stranger with sand in your teeth and a stomach already growling are about to ruin the king's day and possibly sign your own death sentence. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, comment below where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I'm curious who else is awake for this kind of biblical chaos. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the palace court, your feet caked in dust, and the moment is thick with tension. King Ahab is not the cuddly type. He's got the face of someone who hasn't heard no since childhood, and you, unfortunately, are about to say no rain, which is worse. His queen Jezebel is somewhere nearby, and while historians still debate how much direct influence she had over Israel's spiritual downfall, no one argues that she was exactly the nurturing type. You speak the words, bold and trembling. As the Lord lives, there will be neither dew nor rain, except at my word. The guards shift. Ahab's jaw tightens. Somewhere, a fly buzzes loudly in the silence. Then you run, and you don't stop. God sends you east, into hiding. Not to a safe house or a secret underground bunker, but to a brook called Kerith. Brook is generous. It's more like a trickle that snakes between dry bushes and cracked stones. But you're grateful. The water is cool, and even more miraculously, ravens bring you food. Every morning and evening, here they come. Wings flapping like bad ideas in the night, dropping bread and meat at your feet. It's bizarre and kind of gross, but you're too hungry to care. One historian once joked that the ravens must have been stealing food from Ahab's palace kitchen, which would be poetic justice. Another theory suggests the original Hebrew word might mean Arabians, not ravens, implying human help. But the text insists it's birds, and honestly, at this point, you're not picky. You just try not to think too hard about where the meat came from. It tastes fine sort of. The days pass, and you begin to fall into rhythm. Wake up, drink from the brook, wait for the flutter of wings, eat, then sit and listen to the wind. There's nothing to do. No Netflix, no scrolls, no social updates. Just the sound of water slowly lessening and the sun bleaching everything it touches. You talk to God sometimes, but he doesn't always answer. He seems content to let the silence do the teaching. One morning, the brook is gone. Just a muddy imprint remains. You scratch your head and stare at the sky, waiting for orders. And they come, quietly but firmly. Go to Zarephath, not nearby, not safe. In fact, it's inside in Jezebel's home turf. You are now wandering right into enemy territory. God's sense of direction is, frankly, terrifying. You leave the dried brook and begin the journey. It's long. Your feet blister. Your mouth dries. You pass farmers digging holes in cracked soil, mothers trying to wring water from air, children chasing mirages. The famine is real, and it's your fault, or so it feels. But God keeps moving your feet forward. Eventually, you arrive at Zarephath and meet a widow gathering sticks. Her face is hollow, her hands are shaking, and she looks at you like she might cry or slap you. You ask her for water. She nods. Then you ask for bread. That's when she stops. I have only a handful of flour, she says, and a little oil. I'm collecting sticks to make a final meal for me and my son. Then we'll die. Excellent. Truly uplifting. You, prophet of God, are now asking a starving mother to feed you first. You swallow the guilt, the awkwardness, the ache in your chest, and tell her what God told you. Do not be afraid. Make me a little bread, and afterward make some for yourself and your son. The flour and oil won't run out, and somehow she believes you. You eat that night. She eats. Her son eats. And the next day, the flour is still there. Same with the oil. And the next day, and the next. It's like a pantry miracle, quietly repeating itself while the world outside starves. You stay with them for days, maybe weeks. The boy laughs again. The widow hums again. It almost feels like home. Then the boy dies. It happens suddenly. Fever maybe, or hunger finally catching up. His chest stops rising, and the laughter is gone. The widow's eyes burn holes in you. Did you come to remind me of my sin? To kill my son? You take the child from her arms and carry him upstairs. You lay him on a small bed. You pray. You pace. You lie on top of him, arms stretched, breath held, and cry out to God not once, not twice, but 3 times. You sound desperate, because you are. God listens. The boy breathes. You return him to his mother, and she looks at you with something new in her eyes. Not just gratitude, something sacred, something like awe. Now I know you are a man of God, she whispers. You nod, but inside you're just thankful that you didn't break under the weight of it all. You lie awake that night. The house is quiet, save for the soft breathing of a resurrected child. You stare at the ceiling and wonder what tomorrow will bring. You've faced kings, birds, drought, starvation, and now death. And you're still only at the beginning. You wake up before the sun has fully stretched across the horizon, the light still rubbing sleep from its eyes. And already you feel that strange sensation of being called somewhere again, somewhere not safe, somewhere not home. You stretch your legs, which ache from too much sleeping on uneven floors, and thank the widow for the last shared meal. She hugs her son a little tighter now, as if he might vanish again if she blinks too long. You don't blame her. Miracles are hard to trust the second time. The Lord speaks to you once more. It is time to return to Ahab. You blink. Maybe misheard. Return. Really? To the man who has spent years hunting you, who probably has your name etched into every wanted poster from Samaria to the coast. Yes, that Ahab. You lace up your sandals, shoulders heavier than your satchel, and start the long walk back toward confrontation. The landscape looks worse now. Famine is no longer a whisper, it's a full scream. Crops are brittle, trees are bare, animals limp rather than run. You pass people with hollow cheeks and quiet eyes. No one even looks up as you pass. It's a kind of silence you can feel in your bones, as if the ground itself has forgotten how to sing. Somewhere near Mount Carmel, you meet Obadiah. He is a palace official, one of the few left with a conscience. He recognizes you immediately, and his eyes widen like someone who just saw a ghost. Which, to be fair, is not that far from the truth. You tell him to go inform Ahab that you have returned. Obadiah hesitates, then panics. If I tell him and you vanish again, he'll kill me, he says, eyes darting. You assure him, with the calm of someone who barely believes his own words, that you will not vanish. You will stand your ground, against the king, against the prophets of Baal, against whatever this day decides to throw at you. He leaves, reluctantly, muttering about how prophets are terrible for one's blood pressure. Ahab arrives not long after. He sees you and sneers. Is that you, the troubler of Israel? You almost want to laugh, as if it's your fault the rain stopped, the fields died, the people starved. You reply, voice steady, I have not made trouble for Israel. You and your father's house have. You abandoned the Lord and followed Baal. The air gets tighter. Ahab's jaw clenches, but instead of drawing a sword, he listens as you propose something bold, something insane, a contest, a prophet's duel. One altar for Baal, one for the Lord. Fire from heaven decides the truth. The king agrees. Maybe he's desperate, maybe he's entertained. Maybe he thinks you're just tired and delusional. Either way, you now have a date with divine fire. Mount Carmel rises like a broken tooth from the land. The wind bites as you climb it, dragging stones, building altars, arranging wood. You gather the people, call for the prophets of Baal, 450 of them. They arrive in waves, dressed in finery and fury, their chants already beginning before they even reach the summit. You let them go first. They dance, they sing, they shout, they twirl and stab and chant some more. Hours pass, nothing happens. The sun climbs, then starts to fall, and still nothing. You start taunting them. It's a little cruel, but also kind of fun. Maybe Baal is busy. You call. Maybe he's traveling. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's using the bathroom. That last one gets a few chuckles from the more cynical onlookers. Still, no fire, just tired feet and bleeding prophets. Then it's your turn. You rebuild the altar. You stack the wood. You place the offering. Then, just to make sure no one accuses you of trickery, you soak the whole thing with water. Once, twice, 3 times. The trench around it fills and spills. The sacrifice is drenched. It's the ancient equivalent of soaking your campfire and still expecting it to catch. Then you pray. It's not long, not loud, not flashy, just honest. Just you and God. And before you finish speaking, the fire comes. It falls like judgment and mercy rolled into one. It consumes everything, the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, even the water. People fall to their knees. Some scream, some weep. Everyone watches, wide-eyed, as the impossible becomes visible. You seize the moment, seize the prophets of Baal. You cry. The people, shaken and trembling, obey. What follows is brutal, swift, and, for the sake of PG-13 ratings, let's just say the valley becomes very quiet, very quickly. You climb again, higher still. You kneel and pray. You ask God for rain, not once, not twice, but 7 times. And on the 7th, your servant sees a cloud, the size of a man's hand, rising from the sea. It seems small, laughable even, but you know better. You tell Ahab to get in his chariot. A storm is coming. Then you run. And oh, how you run. God gives you strength, and you outrun horses. Your robe flaps like a sail in a hurricane. Your legs forget they're tired. You sprint through mud and wind and prophetic adrenaline. You arrive in Jezreel, soaked, panting, alive. But the next day Jezebel hears about everything, and she's not amused. She sends a message. By this time tomorrow, you will be dead. Just like that, the fire is gone. The courage, the triumph, the miracles, they vanish under the shadow of one angry woman with influence and intent. Your legs forget how to stand. Your heart forgets how to beat strong. You run again, but not toward anything. Just away. Away from Jezebel. Away from fear. Away from everything. You do not look back. The wind rushes past your ears, but it cannot drown out the pounding of fear in your chest. You run through fields that should be green, but are instead brittle and lifeless. You trip once, twice, catching yourself just before your knees hit the cracked earth. By the time you stop, the city is a memory behind you, and the wilderness has swallowed you whole. There is no fire now, no voice from heaven, no cheering crowds, just silence, heavy, pressing, almost mocking silence. You walk farther into it, deeper into the wilderness, as if the farther you go, the less real your failure might feel. You are alone again, and this time, you do not want to be found. Eventually, you collapse under the thin shade of a broom tree. It is a pitiful little thing, barely tall enough to cast a decent shadow, but you sit anyway. The sun beats down. Your heart feels like a stone in your chest. You whisper, almost too quietly to hear, "I have had enough. Lord, take my life." You close your eyes. Maybe sleep will do what death hasn't. Maybe dreams will be kinder than memories. But before darkness can take you fully, you feel a nudge. Then another. You open your eyes to see an angel. He looks unimpressed. "Get up and eat," he says, like a mother waking up a stubborn child before school. You blink. There's bread baking on hot stones beside you and a jar of water. You did not bring them. You did not ask for them. But here they are. Warm, fragrant, real. You eat. You sleep again. He wakes you a second time. And again, the words are simple, almost irritated. "Get up and eat. The journey is too much for you." No pep talk, no magical robe of encouragement, just food and facts. Honestly, it is kind of refreshing. One bite at a time, strength returns. Not joy, not yet. But enough strength to stand, enough strength to walk. You begin your next journey. 40 days and 40 nights, through terrain that laughs at your feet and sun that tries to peel your skin from your bones. The wilderness is not kind, but it is honest. Every rock is real. Every thorn reminds you that you are still alive. And for now, that will have to be enough. You barely speak during the journey. What is there to say? You once called fire from heaven, and now you are counting the cracks in your sandals. You once outran chariots, and now you are limping toward a mountain no one visits anymore. Mount Horeb Sinai, the mountain of God. It has other names, but they all feel like the same thing far away. Along the way, you pass a scorpion the size of your thumb, and for a moment you consider whether it would be more merciful to let it sting you and end this misery. But it scurries off and leaves you to your slow, trudging pilgrimage. You talk to a cactus at one point. It does not answer. At least it does not judge you. Historians still debate the exact location of Horeb. Some believe it is in the southern Sinai Peninsula. Others argue for a site in northwestern Arabia. Either way, scholars agree on this much: it is not an easy place to reach, especially on foot, especially without GPS, snacks, or morale. Eventually, the mountain rises in front of you. Not grand, not glorious, just ancient. Its silence is louder than thunder. You find a cave, dark and uninviting, but it is shelter. You crawl in, you sit, you wait. God's voice comes, soft but pointed. "What are you doing here, Elijah? You are tired, so tired." The words spill out. "I have been zealous. I've done everything. But the people have rejected you. They've torn down your altars. They've killed your prophets. And now they want me dead." There is silence again. You are used to it by now. Then the command comes. "Go out and stand on the mountain." You do. And then it happens. A wind tears through the cliffs. It howls and shrieks, flinging rocks like angry words. You cover your face, but God is not in the wind. Then, an earthquake. The ground lurches beneath your feet. Stones fall, cracks appear, but God is not in the earthquake. Then fire. Flames whip across the sky, heat pressing against your skin. You remember Mount Carmel, but God is not in the fire. Then, finally, a whisper. So soft, it barely exists. A still, small voice. You cover your face with your cloak. You know, the voice speaks again. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Same question, same answer. But everything has changed. You are not rebuked. You are not punished. You are recommissioned. You are told to go. Anoint Hazael king over Aram. Anoint Jehu king over Israel. And find Elisha, the one who will carry your mantle. You are reminded that you are not alone. 7,000 in Israel have not bowed to Baal. You are not the last spark. You are part of something still burning. You sit for a while longer in that cave. Outside, the wind has calmed. The sun rises again. You think of bread baked on stones, of birds that brought dinner, of a child who once breathed again, and of the fire that never came with noise, but with a whisper. You leave the cave not because the mountain has changed, but because you have. The silence that once pressed down on your chest now feels like a quiet companion. You descend slowly, your cloak brushing against rough stone. your legs still aching but moving with new purpose. You do not know exactly where Elisha is, only that you will find him, and that somehow, this boy plowing in a field is supposed to carry everything you have carried. The land stretches wide before you, fields waiting to be broken, skies waiting to rain again. You pass through dry valleys and abandoned villages, some still scarred by drought. Every now and then someone recognizes your face. They look twice, then bow their heads or cross to the other side of the road. Fame is a strange burden when it comes wrapped in fire and famine. Eventually, you find Elisha. He is not at a school of prophets or in prayer beneath a tree. He is behind a pair of oxen, plowing a dusty field like every other ordinary man trying to survive. You watch him for a moment, the rhythm of his steps, the way he leans into the work. His hands are calloused, his tunic stained, and yet he carries a quiet steadiness, as if he has never known that the world could end in fire. You do not speak. You take your cloak and place it on his shoulders. No words, no explanation, just cloth and calling. Elisha stops. He turns. His eyes widen, not in understanding, but in question. You keep walking. If he is meant to follow, he will. He runs after you. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," he says. "Then I will come with you." You nod. Let him say farewell. Let him burn the plow, sacrifice the oxen, feed his people one last meal. And he does. The fire rises behind him as he walks beside you, leaving behind everything he knew. He says little, just watches. Observes how you speak, how you eat, how you pray. You are not an easy teacher. You are tired, often silent, and occasionally mutter to yourself when you think no one is listening. But he stays. Through the long roads, the dry winds, the endless questions from villagers who still wonder if the drought was your fault. You return to the work of a prophet, not the firework moments, but the slow, steady building of truth. You're right. You teach. You whisper warnings into kingly ears that are too full of pride to hear them. You listen to God and obey, even when obedience feels like walking in circles. One day, God speaks again, not in thunder, not in flames, just a quiet word, certain and final. It is time. You know what that means. You do not ask for more details. You only start walking. You head to Gilgal first. Elisha walks with you. On the way, you stop and speak with a group of prophets. They greet you with reverence and ask Elisha if he knows that today is the day the Lord will take you. Elisha nods, says he knows, but asks them not to talk about it. You say nothing. Next, you go to Bethel. More prophets. More questions. Elisha tells them the same thing. Yes, he knows. No, he does not want to hear it. You glance at him from the side. He is walking closer to you now, shoulders squared, but eyes heavy. You wonder if he will be ready when the time comes. You move on to Jericho. The same questions, the same knowing silence. Then, you reach the Jordan River. It flows wide and quiet, a ribbon of memory cutting through the landscape. You stop at its edge, take off your cloak, roll it in your hands, and strike the water. It parts, like it did for Moses, like it once did for Joshua. The waters roll back, exposing dry ground, and you walk across with Elisha at your side. Behind you, 50 prophets stand watching from a distance, too respectful to follow, too curious to look away. Once on the other side, you pause. You look at Elisha. "Tell me," you say, "what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" He doesn't hesitate. "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." You raise your eyebrows. Bold, very bold. But you do not mock him. You only nod and say, "You have asked a difficult thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." The sky is clear. The air holds its breath. Then it happens. You are walking, talking, just another quiet moment in a long line of journeys. Suddenly, the wind changes. A sound like hooves and flame fills the air. A chariot of fire, pulled by horses of fire, appears between you and Elisha. It is blinding. It is holy. It is terrifying. You feel your feet lift from the earth. Your cloak slips from your shoulders and floats downward. You are rising. You hear Elisha's voice, shouting your name, calling you Father, calling you chariots and horsemen of Israel. His voice cracks. You cannot answer. The world fades beneath you. You do not die. You are taken. And below, your cloak lands softly at the feet of a trembling apprentice. The wind that carried you away still lingers in the air, a breath of something divine left behind, like a fading echo. Elisha stands there, stunned, your cloak at his feet, eyes still searching the sky for any trace of your presence. But you are gone. Not buried, not mourned, not enshrined, simply taken. A mystery wrapped in fire and silence. Elisha bends down and picks up your cloak. It is heavier than he expected, not just in fabric but in memory. He folds it over his arm and turns toward the river you had just crossed together. The Jordan flows as it always has, indifferent to miracles, unaware of prophets. But he walks to the bank, as you once did, stands where your feet last stood, and does what you taught him. He strikes the water. Nothing happens at first. There's a beat, maybe two, where the universe seems to hesitate. Then the water parts. Slowly, smoothly, like it recognizes the spirit that now rests on him. He crosses, dry as bone, the cloak fluttering behind him like a banner from a kingdom no one can see. From across the river, the group of prophets who had been watching step forward. They meet Elisha with a mixture of reverence and skepticism, as if unsure whether they are seeing a man or a myth in the making. They bow their heads, acknowledging what has happened, though some still whisper that maybe you were just dropped onto a nearby mountain. In fact, they send a search party, convinced they can find your body somewhere in the valleys. Elisha tells them not to bother, but they go anyway, returning days later, empty-handed, sheepish. He says nothing. There is no need to explain a fire that left no ashes. Elisha begins his work. He walks the dusty paths you once walked, stays in the homes you once stayed in, offers counsel and warnings that now come from his own mouth. And yet, your voice still lingers in his memory, like distant thunder. He performs miracles, small and strange at first. He heals a spring with salt. He calls down a bear on some extremely disrespectful teenagers, a story that historians still argue over in hushed tones, wondering if it was metaphor, exaggeration, or just one of those moments where God decides not to be subtle. He meets kings. He speaks truth to power. He multiplies oil. He raises the dead. The cloak, your cloak, becomes part of his skin, your spirit folded into his breath. Still, there are nights he stares into the fire and whispers your name, wondering if he will ever understand the fullness of the flame that took you. Back in Israel, your story begins to stretch. People speak of you with awe, sometimes with fear. Your name becomes legend, your deeds embroidered into scrolls, your fire echoed in every thunderstorm that passes too close. Children pretend to be you, shouting to imaginary skies, calling down rain or flame. Elders shake their heads and say they remember when you stood before kings and called them fools. But it is not just Israel that remembers. Far to the south, in hidden desert caves, monks will one day whisper your story as they wrap themselves in silence and prayer. They will trace your steps through dry places, searching for the still small voice. They will say your name before sleep, hoping to dream of fire. Centuries pass, and still, you are not forgotten. One day, long after kings and kingdoms have crumbled, a carpenter from Nazareth climbs another mountain. His disciples follow, eyes heavy with confusion, unsure of what they are about to witness. And there, in the shimmer of light, in the hush of divine timing, you stand again. Next to you, Moses, you speak with Jesus, of what the disciples do not fully hear. But your presence is enough. The fire still dances in your eyes. the whisper still rests on your tongue. You, who never died, who vanished in a chariot of flame, now return in a moment that bends time itself. The disciples fall to the ground, overwhelmed. When they look again, you are gone. Again, Elisha is long gone by then, buried beneath layers of earth and memory. But your story lingers, braided into the DNA of prophets, preachers, and poets. You are not just remembered, you are awaited. And for the sleepy soul listening now, tucked under blankets, eyes half closed, you are more than just an ancient figure. You are the embodiment of struggle, of fire, of perseverance. You are the reminder that even when we run, even when we collapse beneath trees and whisper prayers of surrender, God does not forget. You wandered, yes. You suffered, yes. You doubted, absolutely. But you were never truly alone, and neither is the one listening. Somewhere, out beyond the silence of their room, a whisper still speaks, soft, steady, patient, calling them forward. You find yourself walking again, though the road is not the same. It curves through time rather than terrain, and every step feels like memory wrapped in dust. You are not Elijah now, not entirely, but something closer to the one watching from above, retracing steps once blistered and bloody, watching how the world remembers what it can and reshapes what it forgets. The journey takes you through small towns, long abandoned. Olive trees still grow here, stubborn and wrinkled like prophets themselves, clinging to rocky soil with roots deeper than reason. You pass a crumbling altar, its stones marked with soot. Children once played here, mimicking your call for fire with sticks and shouted prayers. Now only wind dances across the hill. You pause beside a well, dry for years, but still echoing. A woman once stood here, laughing at a prophet who told her the flower would not run out. She did not laugh later. Her son's breath, returned like morning light through cracked shutters, lingers in the air around this place. You touch the edge of the old stone, not to drink, but to remember. Farther along, you reach a market square that used to be filled with shouting, laughter, and bargaining. Now it is quiet. A single clay jug rests in the corner, forgotten, or maybe left behind on purpose. You pick it up. Inside only dust. Still, you hold it gently, as if the echoes of all it once carried might spill out. As you walk, you remember the ones who tried to follow you. Not just Elisha, not just the prophets who watched from the hills, but the quiet ones, the unseen ones. The ones who whispered your name before sleep, asking not for fire, but for courage. Their footsteps never made scrolls, but they walked anyway. One man, bent with age and doubt, once prayed beneath a lone fig tree, asking God why he still felt empty after all these years. He had never called down fire, never outrun chariots, never stood before kings. Still, his quiet faith rippled outward like water in a dry brook. You saw it, even when no one else did. A woman with rough hands and tired eyes lit a lamp every evening and prayed for rain. Not just the kind that filled jars and soaked fields, but the kind that softened hearts. She never met a prophet, never saw a chariot of fire, but her prayers stitched hope into the fabric of generations. These are your companions now. Their names are not written beside yours, but their faith holds the same flame. Not loud, not sudden, but steady, like the whisper that once pulled you out of a cave and into the light again. You remember that whisper now. It did not argue, it did not lecture. It simply existed, patient and full of truth. A voice not meant to shatter rocks, but to realign your soul. It did not need to raise its tone. It was enough just to speak. As you walk, you begin to notice others walking too, not toward you, but beside you. They carry their own burdens, shaped like unanswered prayers and quiet doubts. Some limp, some weep, some wear smiles that do not reach their eyes. You say nothing, but they know you see them. One stops to adjust the strap on a sandal that keeps slipping loose. Another hums an old melody under her breath, the kind that sounds like mourning and hope woven together. A child skips ahead, then stops, waiting for an older brother to catch up. The boy's face is streaked with dirt and wonder. You walk among them, not as fire, but as memory, as story, as something they do not have words for, but feel in their bones. You pass a fig tree blooming out of season. You pass a river that parts only slightly, as if offering a glimpse of something holy beneath the surface. You pass a cave, empty now, but still holding the scent of a prophet who once listened. And still, you keep walking. The sun leans low, casting long shadows that dance across the ground. You look back. Your footsteps are not alone. They are joined by hundreds, thousands, maybe more. The road you walked in fear and exhaustion has become a path others now travel in hope. It is not the fire they remember most. It is not the chariot, or the rain, or even the silence. It is the persistence. The refusal to stop walking. The choice to listen when the voice was small and the fear was loud. You smile, because somewhere, even now, someone is under their own broom tree, thinking they have reached the end. And maybe, just maybe, they will hear this story tonight and find E. You sit at the edge of a village that no longer remembers your name. Children run barefoot over sun-baked paths, chasing laughter that echoes through narrow alleyways. The smell of lentils cooking over an open fire wraps itself around the corners of the houses. Smoke curling through wooden shutters that have been patched too many times to count. You are tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the weariness that grows in the quiet corners of the soul. Elisha is somewhere nearby, always nearby now, watching, learning, perhaps worrying that you will vanish again. The air is warm, not from heat, but from waiting. The kind of warmth that wraps around the chest and reminds you that things are about to change. You recognize it. It has followed you before, in the moments just before fire fell, just before the brook dried up, just before the whisper called you out from the mouth of a cave. You close your eyes and listen, not for thunder, but for that same stillness that once held more truth than 1,000 sermons. It is during this quiet that you hear another call. Not loud, not commanding, but soft and clear, as if spoken from behind your ribs. Go to Damascus, anoint Hazael as king of Aram, then go to Jehu, the man who will append thrones and disrupt empires. The thought makes you pause. These are not soft missions. These are acts that will set fire to political alliances, to the plans of proud men. You nod slowly, because what else can you do, and begin to gather your things. You tell Elisha nothing at first, just that it is time to move. He asks no questions, not out loud. His silence is full of understanding. He packs lightly, like someone who knows the journey will ask for more than cloth and bread. The road to Damascus is long, dry, and filled with the scent of dust and fig trees. You pass shepherds tending flocks that look as hungry as their keepers. You see caravans loaded with spices and silk, signs that trade still flows, even when peace does not. You say little. The voice inside you has not spoken again, but its echo is enough to keep your feet moving. When you reach Damascus, you do not announce yourself with trumpets. You slip through its stone gates like a shadow, walking with the practiced ease of someone who has outrun kings and hidden beside brooks. You find Hazael, servant to the king, a man with sharp eyes and a mouth that does not smile unless he means it. You look into his future and see blood. You tell him what the Lord has shown you, that he will be king, that he will bring destruction, that the fires of war will dance under his command. He listens, expression unreadable, then thanks you with a voice like gravel. You leave before the weight of that future settles too deeply in your chest. Some futures do not need your presence to unfold. They only need your obedience. Next comes Jehu. You find him in the camp of the soldiers, armor dusty, hands stained from the sword. You anoint him to tell him what must be done, that he will bring judgment, that he will ride fast and furious, that kings will fall by his hand. His eyes widen, then sharpen. He is ready, maybe too ready. You do not stay to see what he will become. The work leaves your spirit heavier than your pack. You wonder if Elisha sees it, if he notices how your steps drag slightly, how your shoulders sink just a little more with each mile. You do not speak of it. Instead, you let the silence stretch between you like an old cloak, worn but familiar. You return to the schools of the prophets, those hidden pockets of faith where young men gather to learn how to listen. They greet you with reverence, their faces lit by the stories told about you, their voices hushed, as if you might explode into flame at any moment. You smile at them, not unkindly, and remind them that God does not always speak through fire. Sometimes, he speaks through bread, through silence, through the patience of a tired man who just keeps walking. One night, you sit beside a small fire outside one of these schools. Elisha sits across from you, watching the flames dance between you. He says your name quietly. You look up. His voice is calm, but his eyes are searching. "Is it soon?" he asks. You nod. There is no need to pretend. The whisper has returned. The time draws near. Elisha breathes in through his nose, then exhales slowly. He does not cry. He does not plead. He only nods and throws another twig into the fire, watching the sparks disappear into the night. In the morning, you rise before the sun and begin to walk. Elisha follows, as always. You move from Gilgal to Bethel, then to Jericho. At each stop, the prophets come out, whispering to Elisha, telling him what he already knows, that today the Lord will take you. He tells them to be quiet, not unkindly, just firmly. He does not want to hear it spoken aloud, as if naming it will make it harder to bear. When you reach the Jordan River, the final barrier, the water flows wide and strong. You remove your cloak, roll it slowly in your hands, and strike the surface. It parts, just as it did before. The two of you walk across on dry ground, feet never touching the water. Behind you, the prophets watch in silent awe. You reach the other side, and everything slows. The air feels thick, like honey. You turn to Elisha, look into the eyes of the one who has walked beside you, who has served without complaint, who has waited without demand. You ask what you can do for him before you are taken. He does not flinch. He meets your gaze and speaks without hesitation. "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit." You blink. It is a bold request, one that shakes the dust from your bones. You tell him the truth. It is not yours to give, not entirely, but if he sees you taken, it will be his. The silence that follows is not heavy, it is sacred. Then the wind begins to change. The sky does not rumble, it hums. The earth does not shake, but something inside you begins to rise. You are walking beside him when the chariot appears, fire and light swirling like stars being pulled from the heavens. Horses blaze with glory. The ground trembles, not with fear, but with awe. The chariot passes between you. Elisha cries out, calling you Father, calling you Israel's chariots and horsemen. You feel your feet leave the ground. The air grows sharp, holy, weightless. You do not look down, you do not need to. The cloak slips from your shoulders. It falls like a soft memory, landing at the feet of a man who is ready. You rise, and for a moment, just a moment, you see the world not from the dust, but from the fire. You see the roads you walked, the voices you spoke to, the prayers you whispered into the wind. You see Elisha, standing strong, his hand clutching your cloak, his eyes filled not with fear, but with fire of his own. You do not speak. The fire says enough. You are gone, but not forgotten. Elisha stands where you left him, surrounded by silence so complete it presses into his skin. The cloak in his hand still holds the warmth of your shoulders. He looks up at the sky, at the path of fire and wind that has vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The air smells like lightning, sharp and ancient, as if heaven had breathed just once and returned to quiet. He does not cry, not yet. There is no time. The river waits. He walks to the Jordan with the cloak gripped tightly, the same river you parted with a quiet motion and calm faith. He breathes in slowly, steadying his hands, then rolls the cloth just as you did. He strikes the water and speaks the words, not with confidence, but with longing. Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah? For a moment, nothing moves. Then the river shivers. The waters roll back, as if recognizing the echo of your spirit in the boy now standing where you once did. He walks across the dry riverbed, each step more certain than the last. On the far bank, the prophets wait, wide-eyed, mouths half open, trying to understand what they just witnessed. They bow slightly when he steps onto the grass. It is not reverence for Elisha alone, but for what just happened. For the man who is gone, for the fire still fresh in the air. Some of them whisper among themselves, voices low and uncertain. Others ask if perhaps the Spirit simply took you somewhere else, somewhere hidden. They urge Elisha to let them search the nearby hills and valleys, just in case. Elisha sighs. He tells them it is not necessary. Still, they insist, and eventually, tired of the noise, he nods. They vanish into the wilderness, calling your name into the wind, searching for footprints where there are none. They return after 3 days, dusty and embarrassed, shrugging their shoulders. Elisha says nothing, just looks past them to the horizon. He begins to walk again, the cloak brushing his ankles, the weight of responsibility now tied into every fiber of its fabric. His journey is not yours, but it feels close. The same footsteps, the same hills, the same silence when answers do not come. He visits the schools of prophets, listens to the questions of the young and the laments of the old. He offers words, not born of experience alone, but of witness. He saw you go. That changes everything. He performs miracles, some small, some strange. He purifies a spring that had poisoned a village, watching the water shift from death to life, with only a handful of salt and a whispered prayer. People begin to notice. Whispers spread from town to town. He is not Elijah, not exactly, but something of Elijah walks with him. Then come the boys. A group of them, maybe emboldened by the absence of grown men, gather near Bethel. They see Elisha walking alone, cloak fluttering, and decide to mock him. "Go on up, you bald head," they chant, laughing in the careless way only the young can. It is cruel, yes, but deeper than that, it is dismissive. They mock not only his appearance, but his authority, his calling, the very idea that someone like him could carry the fire you once held. Elisha stops. He turns slowly. The smile leaves his face. He says nothing to them, not directly. Instead, he curses them in the name of the Lord, not with rage, but with holy sorrow. What happens next remains one of the most debated moments in Scripture. 2 bears come from the woods, sudden and silent, and the boys are struck down. Some say it was justice, others call it a warning. Historians still argue whether it was literal, symbolic, or something else entirely. What no one disputes is the shift. After that moment, no one laughs at Elisha. The years pass. Elisha continues the work. He speaks to kings, heals lepers, feeds the hungry. He becomes the steady presence you once were, the voice of God in the middle of war and famine, the whisper in the courtrooms of the arrogant. But always, your name walks ahead of him. In every town, in every school of prophets, there are still those who remember you. Not just as a man, but as a flame that refused to go out. Your story becomes more than memory. It becomes myth, then legacy, then quiet hope. People light lamps and whisper your name in the night. Not as a spell, not as superstition, but as a prayer. They remember the man who hid by a brook and waited for ravens. They remember the showdown on Mount Carmel, where you stood against the world and called down fire with nothing but soaked stones and trembling faith. They remember the whisper in the cave, the silence that followed the storm, the gentle voice that rewrote your purpose. And then, long after your cloak has turned to dust and your chariot has faded from the sky, another man walks the land. He is different. He carries no staff, wears no prophet's mantle, and yet his words burn through the silence like yours once did. He speaks with authority, not borrowed, but owned. He walks among the poor, heals the broken, eats with the forgotten. And still, they ask, is he Elijah? Some say yes, others say no. Some wait for the fire, the wind, the chariot. But what they find instead is a voice softer than expected, kinder than deserved, and yet powerful, infinitely so. One night, that man climbs a mountain. 3 of his friends walk beside him, their feet unsure, their eyes heavy with questions. At the top, everything changes. His face begins to glow, not with sweat, but with light, with something not of this world. And then, you are there. Standing beside Moses, the lawgiver, you speak to him. No one hears the words, but the moment is enough. Glory surrounds you, fire again, but this time, not destructive, not fearful, just pure, just holy. You do not look at the disciples, but you feel their eyes. They fall to the ground, trembling. They are not ready. Few ever are. When the light fades, you are gone again. The disciples speak of it later, not fully understanding. They ask why the scriptures say Elijah must come first. And the man, the carpenter, the teacher, says that Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him. Perhaps he means John. Perhaps he means something deeper. Perhaps he means that every time someone walks into silence, listens for the whisper, and obeys, Elijah comes again. And now, someone else is walking that path. Someone listening to this, right now, tucked under covers, perhaps blinking through the soft light of their room. They do not wear a prophet's cloak. They have not called down fire or parted waters, but they have sat beneath their own broom tree. They have whispered, enough, into the darkness. They have listened for answers that did not come with thunder, but with stillness. That is what makes them like you. Not the miracles, not the fame, but the moments in between. The walking, the waiting, the choosing to rise when the heart is heavy. That is the truest fire. They will not be carried away in a chariot of flame. They will not have their names written in scrolls, at least not the kind that line the shelves of temples. But their story matters. Their steps echo through time, quiet but constant. And as they drift toward sleep, maybe they will remember that even the greatest prophets were once afraid, once tired, once unsure. And still, they walked. Still, they listened. Still, they believed. You see, the fire was never really about the chariot. It was always about the one who kept going, even when the fire went out. You walk now through a memory, not your own, but one being passed from voice to voice, reshaped in the warmth of firelight and the hush of sleep. Your name no longer belongs only to you. It has slipped into the language of longing, into the prayers of those who do not always know what they are asking for. Somewhere, a grandmother tells your story to a child who cannot yet read, her fingers tracing invisible flames in the air. Somewhere else, a man who has not prayed in years whispers your name into the dark, wondering if God still speaks. You walk among these echoes, not as a ghost, but as a witness. You are not the center anymore, and that is a quiet relief. Your work was never about you. It was about listening, obeying, rising when you wanted to fall, stepping forward when everything in your chest begged you to hide. That is what they remember. Not your strength, not your miracles, but your motion. Your stubborn persistence in the face of silence. Elisha continues the path you left. His story stretches wide, filled with moments you would recognize, and some you would not. He heals a commander named Naaman, a man too proud to dip in a river, too desperate not to try. The water washes away more than leprosy. It scrapes pride from his skin, teaches him that healing sometimes comes in ways that make no sense until you are clean. Elisha's days are not all fire and glory. Some are marked by hunger, by doubt, by students who question more than they learn. He watches kings rise and fall, their hearts tangled in ambition, their ears closed to anything but the sound of their own voices. And still, he speaks. Still, he stays. One day, Elisha lies on a bed, old now, bones heavy, breath slow. He knows the time is near. The fire you rode into the heavens will not come for him. There is no whirlwind waiting, no chariot burning through the sky. He will die as most do, with the taste of dust in his mouth and a final prayer trembling on his tongue. And yet, even in death, your legacy continues through him. After he is buried, a man's body is thrown hastily into his tomb during a raid. The moment the dead man's flesh touches Elisha's bones, he breathes again. Life, wrapped in a final breath, sparks from what was thought finished. The story refuses to end. The fire flickers one last time. Back in the present, in this strange in-between where time curls like smoke, you see others now, not prophets, not kings, just people, ordinary, flawed, beautiful people. A woman sweeping her floor with a tired back and a full heart. A teenager praying with words that stumble over one another, unsure if they are doing it right. A widower sitting alone on a porch, Bible open, reading the same line for the third time because the ache in his chest will not let him move on. They are not calling fire. They are not splitting rivers. But they are listening. And that is where your story truly lives. You do not belong only to history. You are not confined to chapters and verses. You are not a figure frozen in stained glass. You live in every moment where someone chooses faith over fear, obedience over comfort, stillness over panic. You live in every whisper that says, keep going, even when nothing ahead looks clear. There is a boy somewhere, not much older than the one you once handed back to his mother, newly breathing. He stands on a street corner, handing out sandwiches with shaking hands. He does not speak. He just smiles. People pass him without looking, but one man stops. He takes the sandwich, nods, and walks away with tears in his eyes. He will eat. He will pray again tonight. The boy will never know this, and that is enough. There is a woman lighting candles in a kitchen too quiet. She prays not for miracles, but for courage, for strength to keep showing up, to keep loving, to keep believing that the small things matter. She makes soup for her neighbor, knits a scarf for her grandson, writes a note she never sends. Her life is a still small voice, steady, constant, holy. There is a teacher in a crowded classroom, chalk dust on her fingers, heart tired from trying to reach students who carry more pain than their years should allow. She tells them your story, not with fire and spectacle, but with gentleness. She explains the silence in the cave. She pauses at the whisper. She tells them God is not always loud. One student listens, really listens. He will remember that whisper for the rest of his life. You see these moments unfold like petals, each one opening slowly, quietly, without applause. These are not chariots of fire. These are not mountaintop confrontations, but they are sacred. They are steady flames that refuse to go out. You sit again beneath the broom tree, not in despair now, but in rest. The tree has grown taller, its shade stretches wider. Others gather beneath it. They sit beside you, not looking for answers, just for presence. They do not ask for fire, they ask for peace. You nod. A child leans against your side, humming to herself, a tune you think you almost recognize. An old man sharpens a stick into a walking staff. A mother rocks a baby to sleep, her hands soft but strong. These are your people now, not prophets, not priests, just pilgrims. A breeze stirs the leaves above. It sounds like laughter, or perhaps prayer. You close your eyes and feel the ground beneath you, solid, warm, familiar. The earth does not remember every fire, but it remembers every footstep. Somewhere, a new prophet is rising. He will not wear your cloak. He will not carry your name, but he will carry your legacy. He will listen for the whisper. He will walk into silence. He will rise again and again, even when no one sees. And so will the one listening now. The one lying in bed, eyelids heavy, heart tender. The one who has carried too much this week, who has prayed into the silence and wondered if it mattered. It does. You would know. You have walked that silence. You have felt that same weight. They do not need fire, not tonight. They need the whisper, the one that says, you are not alone. The one that says, you are still part of the story. The one that says, keep going, because there will be more mornings, more steps to take, more people to love, more silence to sit with. And somewhere, between the noise and the flame, a voice is still speaking. So let them rest now, wrapped in the knowledge that even prophets grow tired, even heroes sit beneath broom trees, even legends once begged to stop, and yet they walked, and so will they. You walk through the stillness of the late evening, where shadows stretch long across the earth, and the air cools just enough to make the breath catch gently in your throat. This is not the kind of silence that presses down like a burden, but the kind that opens something within you, the kind that invites listening. You have always known the difference. You, who stood on mountains, who hid beside brooks, who waited for the voice that came not in thunder or fire, but in the soft rustling of truth. The road beneath your feet now is worn, but familiar. It twists gently through hills that once echoed with the voices of prophets and the cries of those who refused to listen. The land remembers. You can feel it in the way the trees lean slightly toward the path, as if still waiting for someone to pass who knows how to listen. You pause often now, not because you are tired, but because you know how sacred it is to simply notice. In a small village you never named, where goats wander freely and the smell of baked bread curls from every home, a boy runs through the dust barefoot. He nearly collides with you, skids to a stop, looks up. You see the question in his eyes. You do not answer with words. You simply smile, lift your hand slightly, and he grins back, uncertain but curious. He will remember that face. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day when he is older and walking a road alone, he will think of you. He will think of a man with gentle eyes who said nothing but made him feel known. That is how stories pass now, not through scrolls, but through moments. You continue on and find a group of travelers resting beneath a tree. They share figs and water, and when they see you approach, they offer what they have without asking who you are. This, too, is sacred. Hospitality without expectation, kindness without curiosity. You sit with them a while. One woman hums an old melody that sounds like something from long before kings wore crowns. Another man, his hands scarred and strong, tells a story that feels familiar, even though you have never heard it before. It is not about you. And that, strangely, brings relief. Because your story is not about your name anymore. It is about the echoes. The way fire once called down on soaked stones still burns quietly in hearts you will never meet. The way you stood alone, trembling but unwavering, still teaches others how to speak truth into places where lies have taken root. You do not need to be remembered for the spectacle. Let them remember the silence, the listening, the rising. After the meal, you thank them and rise. One of them watches you as you go, her eyes lingering a moment too long. She says softly to the others, "He reminded me of Elijah." They nod. No one speaks the obvious, but you hear it anyway. You are no longer one man. You are a pattern, a path, a presence that walks with those who dare to keep going. The stars begin to appear, one by one, like notes in a song only the sky can sing. You tilt your head back and watch them. Somewhere above, perhaps farther than thought can reach, the chariot still rides. But here, under this sky, on this earth, the work continues. You remember the cave, the moment the world shook and cracked and screamed, and yet God waited for all that noise to pass before speaking. You remember the weight of the whisper, how it did not crush you, but lifted you. You remember the feeling of being seen, not for your power or your failure, but for your heart. You walk slower now, not because of age, but because you want to feel each step. You pass by a vineyard just beginning to bloom. The vines curl around wooden frames, stretching toward the heavens with a hope that feels like prayer. A young woman tends them, humming softly, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. She does not see you. She does not need to. You bless her quietly and keep moving. There is a stream nearby. You find it by following the sound of water over stone, a sound that has always comforted you. It reminds you of the brook that once fed you when the world had no room. You sit beside it, dip your fingers in the cool flow, and smile. This is where it all began, in the hidden places, the forgotten corners, the spaces no one deemed worthy. That is where God met you then, and that is where he still meets people now. You think of the one listening now, eyes closed or nearly so, heart tired in ways they do not speak aloud. You think of their questions, the ones that echo in the mind at night, when everything else has gone quiet. Am I seen? Does it matter that I keep showing up, even when no one notices? Is God still listening? Yes, that is the answer that comes, not as a shout, not as a sign written in the stars, but as the gentle certainty that slides into the soul, like breath into lungs. Yes, you are seen. Yes, it matters. Yes, he is still listening. Because every time you rise from your bed, when you would rather stay curled in silence, every time you offer kindness without reward, every time you choose to hope instead of surrender, you are walking the same road Elijah once walked. You are saying, through your actions, I will keep going, even when I cannot see the end. That is what made Elijah who he was. Not the fire, not the miracles, but the choosing. The daily, deliberate choice to listen, to obey, to trust. Even when the cave felt empty, even when the brook dried up, even when fear knocked louder than faith whispered. And you, whether you know it or not, are doing the same. You stand now at the edge of something. Maybe it is a new day. Maybe it is just sleep. But it feels sacred. You have walked through the stories of drought and fire, of fear and whisper, of running and returning. You have felt the weight of the cloak, the press of silence, the joy of a small miracle born from flour and oil. And through it all, you have stayed. You, too, have made it through 1 week wandering with Elijah. That is no small thing. So let the stars sing you to rest. Let the stream continue its quiet song. Let the stories find their way into your bones, not as weight, but as light. You have walked this path with open eyes, with an open heart, with the courage to listen. That is enough. You will not wake with fire in your hands. You will not part rivers with a folded cloak. But you will wake with something just as powerful. Faith, steady, small, unshakable. The kind that changes the world without ever needing to shout. The kind that keeps walking. The kind that listens. You rise before the sun. The horizon is still wrapped in a soft gray hush. The kind that blankets the earth in quiet expectation. Birds stir in the branches overhead, rustling feathers, not yet ready to sing. You stretch your legs. Feel the stiffness in your knees, the old echo of miles already walked. But there is no heaviness in your chest. Not this morning. Today, something feels different. Not loud, not urgent, just clear. You begin walking again. The path you follow curls gently between low hills and scattered olive trees. The soil is cracked in places, soft in others, as if the land itself cannot decide whether to rest or endure. A breeze rises behind you, nudging you forward like an old friend who never stopped believing you could finish what you started. You nod to no one, smile slightly, and let your feet fall into the rhythm of the journey. You pass a farmer tending to a broken fence. His hands are calloused, his eyes squinting at the horizon. He does not see you at first, focused on a post that leans too far to one side. When he notices your presence, he straightens, wipes his forehead, and gives a short wave. You return the gesture. No words pass between you, but something settles there. A shared understanding between two people who know what it means to rebuild things that keep falling apart. Further down the road, you find a group of children playing beside a well. They are loud, laughing, tumbling over one another in a blur of joy and scraped knees. One of them, the smallest, stops and looks your way. He tilts his head, as if trying to place you in a story he once heard. You kneel, pick up a smooth stone from the ground, and hand it to him. He accepts it like a treasure, grinning wide before sprinting back to his friends. You watch him go, heart warmed by the simplicity of it all. He does not need to know who you are. He only knows you gave him something good. You walk on. The land begins to rise slightly, not enough to strain the legs, but enough to feel the shift in altitude. The air grows thinner, drier, touched with the scent of sage and sun-baked stone. In the distance, a small village comes into view, its rooftops clustered together like a gathering of old storytellers. Smoke curls from one chimney, trailing up into the sky in a lazy spiral. You hear the faint clinking of pots, the rhythmic tapping of a loom, a dog barking at nothing in particular. You enter quietly, passing narrow streets lined with drying herbs and laundry that sways in the wind. An old man sits on a stool near the entrance to a home, sharpening a blade that looks more ceremonial than useful. He glances up, nods once, and then returns to his work. You do not interrupt him. Some people speak more clearly with their hands than their mouths. You leave him in peace. At the center of the village is a small gathering place, nothing more than a wide circle of packed earth surrounded by benches. A woman kneels there, drawing water from a well. Her movements are slow, steady, practiced. You approach, and she looks up with eyes the color of storm clouds, ancient and full of questions. She does not ask who you are. Instead, she offers you a drink. You accept, cup in your hands as the cool water pours over your fingers and into your palms. She watches you drink, then says softly, "You look like someone who has walked far." You nod. There is no need to speak. She understands. After a pause, she adds, "The ones who walk far always bring something back, even if they do not know it." You sit with her for a while, sharing the stillness. She hums a melody that feels older than the stones beneath your feet. Eventually, you stand, offer a quiet thank you, and move on. The path narrows again as you leave the village, winding through low brush and tall grass. Insects buzz lazily, the sun now high enough to cast sharp shadows that stretch and shrink with your every step. You find yourself thinking about the river again, the one you struck with your cloak, the one that parted like memory, making space for what came next. You wonder if Elisha ever stood by that same river and thought of you. If he ever watched it flow and imagined the moment you rose into the sky, swallowed by flame and light. He never said it aloud, but you knew. He carried your memory like a second heartbeat, not always loud, but always present. You remember his hands, younger than yours, steadier in some ways, still unsure in others. You remember the look in his eyes, the first time you told him no fire was coming that day, just silence. He did not understand it then. But later, after caves and kings and the heavy weight of ministry, he would. You knew he would. That is why you chose him. The sun begins to tilt westward, shadows lengthening, colors shifting from harsh white to soft gold. You find a fig tree and sit beneath it, legs folded, cloak pulled loosely around your shoulders. You rest your back against the trunk and close your eyes. For a while, you simply breathe. Inhale, exhale, again and again, until your body settles into the rhythm of the earth. A soft voice breaks the quiet. "Are you a prophet?" You open your eyes. A girl stands a few feet away, no older than 12, her hands clasped in front of her, expression cautious but curious. You smile and motion for her to sit. She does, legs tucked beneath her, eyes fixed on your face. You do not say yes. Instead, you ask her why she wants to know. She shrugs. "My grandmother said the prophets knew things." that they could see what others could not. I think she meant they listened better. You nod. Listening is a kind of seeing. She tilts her head, then asks, "What did you hear?" You pause, not because you do not know the answer, but because you want to give it the weight it deserves. I heard that God speaks in small ways, in whispers, in the quiet. She considers this. Do you think he still does? Yes, you say, especially then. She smiles, stands, and runs off without another word. You watch her disappear between the trees. Somewhere, her grandmother sits on a porch, humming a tune and peeling fruit, waiting for her to return. Life continues. You close your eyes again. Let the warmth of the fading sun wash over your skin. You do not need a chariot of fire to know that this, too, is holy. This moment, this breath, this peace. You think of the one listening now, wrapped in a blanket, perhaps still awake, perhaps drifting. You think of their week, the burdens they have carried, the words they have not spoken, the fears they have not shared. You want to tell them it is all right, that God still walks, that he still whispers. You want them to know that silence is not absence, that waiting is not punishment, that the slow steps they take each day matter more than they realize. You want them to know they are seen. And so, you sit with them now, in this story, beneath this fig tree, in this moment that stretches beyond time and geography. You sit with them in their exhaustion, in their longing, in their quiet hope, and together, without fire or thunder, you rest. You wake with the scent of figs still in the air, their sweetness lingering like a promise. The sun has climbed while you rested, now casting gold across the open fields that stretch before you. A breeze hums low through the grass, bending stalks gently, like the earth is bowing in silent worship. You stand slowly, brushing dust from your robe, and begin to walk once more. Each step feels lighter now, not because the road has grown easier, but because your spirit has. The fig tree fades behind you, its shade now empty, its fruit still ripening in the sun. Ahead, the land opens wide, a canvas of stone and soil and sky. You pass through pockets of shade where birds sing and branches sway, the kind of sacred ordinary that people often overlook in their search for miracles. But you have walked long enough to know that the miracles are often here, in the rustling of leaves, in the space between heartbeats, in the quiet endurance of things that keep growing, even when no one is watching. You reach a stretch of road where wildflowers bloom along the edges. Yellow, purple, white, they dot the path like notes in a melody only the soil understands. You stop to kneel beside them, fingers brushing petals, soft as breath. You do not pick them. You simply observe. Some beauty is meant only to be seen. A shepherd appears in the distance, leading a flock across a gentle slope. His staff swings loosely in his hand, more a rhythm than a tool. A dog circles the sheep, darting in and out with practiced grace. The shepherd sees you and lifts a hand. You return the gesture. For a moment, your eyes meet, and in that glance is the mutual recognition of lives spent in movement, in watching, in listening. He continues on, his flock trailing behind, bells clinking softly in the distance. You listen until the sound fades, then continue your walk, the silence now filled with the echo of the bells. A hill rises before you, low and round, crowned with olive trees. You climb it slowly, savoring the ascent. At the top, you find a large, flat rock, warmed by the sun. You sit, letting the heat sink into your bones. From here, the view stretches for miles. Villages like pebbles scattered across the valley. Rivers like silver threads winding between green and gold patches of land. The horizon blurs, a soft meeting of sky and earth. You think about Horeb, about the cave, about the voice that came not in the wind, not in the quake, not in the fire. You think about how easy it is to forget that God often speaks through the ordinary, that it was never about the spectacle, but the stillness. As you sit, A small group of travelers arrives at the base of the hill. Pilgrims, by the look of their robes, carrying water jugs and quiet determination. They climb slowly, speaking softly to one another, pausing now and then to rest. When they reach the top, they are surprised to find you there. One of them, a middle-aged man with sun-reddened cheeks and tired eyes, steps forward. "Peace be upon you," he says, bowing his head. "And upon you," you reply, your voice calm, even, steady. He gestures to the rock beside you. "May we sit?" You nod, and they gather around, some sitting cross-legged, others kneeling in the grass. For a moment, no one speaks. The wind moves through the trees. The leaves answer with a gentle rustle. Then the man speaks again. "We have come a long way," he says. "Some of us searching, some grieving, some not even sure what we need, but we felt drawn here." You listen, not just to his words, but to what pulses beneath them: weariness, hope. That strange mixture of despair and faith that lives in the heart of every pilgrim. One of the younger travelers, a woman with ink-stained fingers, asks, "Were you waiting for someone?" You smile. "Perhaps." She nods, as if that answer is enough. And it is. Another pilgrim, older, with a voice like gravel and smoke, says quietly, "I remember hearing a story when I was a boy, about a prophet who ran, who hid in a cave, who heard God in a whisper." You say nothing, but your eyes meet his, and he knows. He exhales, long and slow. "I never understood why God would speak in whispers." You answer gently, "Because he wants you to lean in." The group falls silent again, not because there is nothing to say, but because they are hearing more in the quiet than they did in their questions. One of them begins to hum a tune. Another closes her eyes, face tilted to the sun. A few begin to cry, not from sorrow, but from release. You do not preach. You do not offer riddles or revelation. You sit with them, presence over pronouncement. You know now that the holiest moments often happen between the lines of language. The air itself speaks. Eventually, the pilgrims rise. They offer soft thank yous and small nods. One leaves behind a bit of bread wrapped in cloth. Another places a smooth stone beside your feet. They descend the hill as they came, quiet, changed in ways even they may not yet understand. You remain seated on the rock, the sun now dipping toward the horizon. Shadows stretch across the valley. The wind picks up, cooler now, carrying the scent of lavender and something distant, like rain far away. You lean back, resting your hands on the warm stone, and close your eyes. You think of the many who have walked after you, not just Elisha, but the unnamed, the unseen, the ones who listened for the whisper in hospital waiting rooms, in empty kitchens, in long nights when the clock seemed stuck at 2 in the morning. The ones who kept walking, even when the path vanished underfoot. You think of the listener now, still here, still awake, or perhaps already drifting, heart open in ways even they do not fully understand. You think of the soft miracle of their faith, not loud, not perfect, but present. You want to tell them that it is enough? That what they carry, even if it feels small, even if it shakes in their hands, is sacred. That God sees them, that he walks with them, even now. You want them to know that Elijah's story was never about fire alone. It was about persistence, about showing up, about saying yes, again and again, even when everything in you wants to say no. It was about silence, and listening, and the willingness to rise after every collapse. And so, as the sky shifts from gold to amber to blue, you whisper once more, "Keep walking, keep listening, you are not alone." Night falls softly, without fanfare, like a curtain drawn slowly across the sky. The stars blink awake, one by one, their quiet shimmer reflecting in your eyes as you watch the heavens unfold above you. The rock beneath you is still warm from the sun, holding on to the memory of the day. A gentle reminder that even what seems cold can carry light for a little while longer. You lie back, hands folded on your chest, listening to the rhythm of the earth. Crickets begin their evening song. An owl calls in the distance, its voice deep and slow, like a sentry keeping watch over the silence. The air grows cooler, brushing against your face, stirring the edge of your cloak, whispering stories only the trees understand. You think of the sky as a scroll, each star a word, each constellation a sentence that has been written by hands far older than time. You read it not with your eyes, but with something deeper, a knowing that sits beneath language. This is the sky you walked under when you fled into the wilderness. This is the sky that looked down on Mount Carmel, on Zarephath, on the river Jordan, and the cave. It has never changed, and in its constancy, you find peace. Below the hill, a small fire flickers. The pilgrims have made camp. Their laughter drifts upward in soft waves, mingling with the sounds of the night. You can see their shadows moving gently around the flame, passing food, sharing stories, leaning in close. You smile, not out of amusement, but out of quiet joy. You were part of their journey, and now they are part of yours. You sit up slowly, brushing sleep from your thoughts. Something in you stirs, not alarm, not urgency, but invitation. You rise, stretch, gather your cloak. The stars guide your steps now, the moon laying a silver path through the tall grass. You walk toward a grove of trees, their leaves rustling like voices too old to remember their own names. You pass beneath them, feeling the cool shade, even in the dark. In the center of the grove, you find a small pool of water. It reflects the sky so perfectly that for a moment, it feels like a doorway. You kneel beside it, cupping your hands, sipping slowly. The water is cold, clean, honest. It tastes like memory. You wash your face, letting the chill clear the last remnants of sleep from your skin. When you look into the pool again, you see not just your face, but the faces of those who came before and those still to come. You see Moses, face veiled, weary from the weight of glory. You see Jeremiah, eyes wet with tears, for a city that would not listen. You see Hannah, whispering prayers that only God could hear. You see Ruth, gathering courage like grain in a field. You see John, crying in the wilderness, preparing the way. You see Mary, singing softly into the dark, her yes echoing across centuries. And you see yourself, not as fire, not as legend, but as one who listened, one who walked, one who stayed. You rise from the pool and walk back toward the hill. The fire below has burned lower, the pilgrims now curled in blankets, breathing deep, the language of rest spoken in unison. You pass them without sound, leaving a prayer behind for each one. Not a prayer of protection, not of provision, but of presence. That they would know, truly know, that they are never alone. You reach the hilltop again, just as the wind shifts. It carries the scent of rain now, far off, but coming. You close your eyes and breathe it in, the promise of renewal, of life returning to dry places. You think of the time when you knelt on another hill, praying for rain, sending your servant again and again to look toward the sea. You think of the cloud, small as a man's hand, and how even the smallest sign of hope was enough to rise and run. You sit once more on the rock, letting the breeze play through your hair, the stars dancing above, like they have always done. You think of the listener now, still here, still held by this story. You wonder where they are. A small apartment, perhaps, with the hum of a fan in the background. Or a room in a quiet house, a cup of tea cooling on the nightstand. Maybe a hospital bed. Maybe a couch where they could not sleep. Maybe a porch in the countryside where crickets sing and the moonlight spills like oil. Wherever they are, you are with them. Not in the way of physical presence, but in spirit, in memory, in the fire that once consumed soaked stones, in the silence that followed a question, in the steps taken when every voice said stop, but the heart whispered go. You want to tell them something, not just a story, not just a truth, a blessing. You want to tell them that the walk matters, that the small choices echo louder than they know, that the faith they carry in cracked hands, shaken hearts, and tired eyes is seen, that every whispered prayer, every breath drawn in hope, every tear shed when no one was looking, is part of the story. You want them to know that they have survived more than they realize, that the desert did not take them, that the cave did not swallow them, that the fire did not burn them up. They are still here, still breathing, still listening, and that is enough. You look out over the valley one last time before laying back on the rock. The sky now gleams with the full glory of stars, constellations wheeling slowly above, ancient and new all at once. You close your eyes, not in exhaustion, but in surrender. You think of how far you have come, from the palace where you spoke truth to a king who would not hear, to the brook that dried beneath your feet, to the widow's table where faith baked into bread, to the mountain of fire, to the wilderness of silence, to the river that split, to the chariot that lifted, and now, here, not in glory, not in thunder, but in peace. You whisper into the dark, not to be heard, but because your heart is full. Thank you for the journey, for the voice, for the one who walked beside you, even when you could not see him, for the one who listens now, who walks their own path, who carries their own flame. You do not need fire to prove that you are here. You need only the silence, the steps, the faith. And so, as the wind softens and the stars begin to fade into the blue of coming dawn, you let go of the story, not because it ends, but because it continues in them. You do not wake this time because you never truly slept. Instead, you rise gently from where you lay, as if drawn upward by something older than gravity, something softer than breath. The sky above is beginning to pale, moving from deep indigo to the first hints of gold, the edge of night rolling backward like a tide. It is that sacred hour when the earth still dreams, and the light stretches its limbs slowly, shyly. You stand at the crest of the hill, the same place you have returned to again and again, and look out across the land. Mist clings to the valleys below, a soft silver that blurs the line between what is real and what is remembered. Trees stand like sentinels, still and reverent, their leaves whispering secrets too quiet for human tongues. The breeze brushes past your cheek, not to move you, but to remind you that you are still here. And so is everything you once loved, everything you once feared, everything you once questioned. You begin walking again, not because there is a destination, but because movement is your prayer. Each step is an offering, each breath a song. You move through the mist like a shadow, not intruding, only passing through. The grass beneath your feet is damp, cool, alive. You feel the earth receiving you, not as a stranger, but as one of its own. You pass a small stone marker, moss-covered and half-sunk into the ground. There is no name on it, no dates, just a simple carving of a flame. Someone placed it there long ago, perhaps in memory of a story, perhaps in honor of a man they never met, but somehow still knew. You pause for a moment, placing your hand gently on the surface. The stone is cold, but the meaning is not. You whisper a blessing, not out loud, but from the deep place in you that still remembers what it meant to be afraid, to be alone, to wonder if the silence would ever end. Further down the path, you hear the sound of a stream, the water tumbling over stones in a language without grammar, but full of meaning. You follow the sound, letting it lead you like a guide. When you reach it, you kneel at the edge and watch as the current carries leaves and fragments of sky downstream. You think of the River Jordan, of the cloak in your hand, of the parting that seemed impossible until it was not. You think of the moment you turned around and saw Elisha watching, his face stunned, his eyes already beginning to carry the weight of your spirit. The stream is not wide, not deep, but it moves with purpose. You dip your hands into it, letting the cold jolt you back into the present. You drink slowly, savoring the taste of simplicity. This is water that has never been stored, never been bottled, never been named. It is just water, and that is enough. Across the stream, a young woman is gathering herbs. She does not notice you at first, too focused on the green in her hands, the way it must be picked gently, with care. When she looks up, she startles slightly, then smiles. She does not ask who you are. She does not ask where you are going. She simply nods and goes back to her work. That too is enough. You leave the stream behind and continue walking through the thinning mist. The world begins to awaken around you. Birds call to one another, their notes crisp and bright. Bees hum near wildflowers. The sun breaks over the horizon like a slow sigh, spilling gold across the landscape. It touches the tops of trees, the edge of rooftops, the faces of people just now stepping out into the light. You pass through another village, smaller than the last, its streets quiet, its homes close together, like hands folded in prayer. A baker pulls fresh bread from a stone oven, the scent curling through the morning air, like a promise. A boy runs past you barefoot, clutching a bundle of firewood, his laughter bouncing off the walls. An old woman waters a row of flowers along her window, whispering encouragement to each bloom. You nod to each of them, receiving their smiles, their glances, their presence. They do not know your name, and that is the beauty of it. You are not Elijah the prophet here. You are simply a traveler, a passerby, a quiet part of their morning. You do not need to be more than that. Outside the village, you find a field of wheat, golden and tall, rippling in the breeze like a sea, waiting for someone to walk across it. You step into it, feeling the stalks brush against your hands, your legs, your memory. Each one is alive, bending without breaking, swaying but never falling. You think of the people you have met, the ones whose names never made it into scrolls, but whose faith grew in quiet corners, whose prayers fed generations. You think of the widow and her flower, of the child who breathed again, of the shepherds and farmers and students who simply kept believing. You walk through the wheat until you reach a circle of stones in the center of the field. It is old, older than anyone remembers, but still here, still sacred. You sit among the stones and rest your hands on your knees. The wind moves through the field, singing a song that sounds familiar, though you cannot place it. You close your eyes and listen, and in that silence, the voice comes again. Not loud, not sudden, just there. It does not say your name. It does not give new instructions. It simply says, I am here. You open your eyes, and for a moment, everything sharpens. The wheat glows, the stones hum, the sky opens, and in that brief, shining second, you understand. This was never about where you went, or what you did. It was never about fire or kings or miracles. It was about presence, about the willingness to stay in the story even when the page went blank, about showing up, again and again. You rise slowly, not because you are weary, but because you are full. The road ahead is still long, still winding, but it is not lonely. Others walk it too. You will meet them, you will bless them, and they will never forget, even if they do not remember your name. You think once more of the listener now, the one curled beneath blankets, or sitting in the dark, or watching dawn break through half-open blinds. You want to tell them this. You have already made it farther than you thought. You have already survived more than you know. You have already become someone braver than your fear. The whisper is still speaking. The presence is still near. The journey is still holy. And so you keep walking, into the day, into the silence, into the story that never ends. The light has changed again. It is no longer the gold of morning or the white blaze of midday. It is softer now, deeper, brushed with amber and the long shadows of things that have endured. The sun leans west, its arc slower, more thoughtful, as if it knows the time for brilliance is passing and the time for rest is drawing near. You walk along a narrow trail lined with tall grass, the tips brushing your fingers as you pass. The wind hums around you, not restless, but steady, carrying the scent of warm earth and distant wood smoke. You feel it in your chest, that quiet knowing. Not an ending, not exactly, but a pause, a breath, a space where the journey draws inward. You do not resist it, you welcome it. The road has brought you here, not with loud announcements, but with footsteps, small choices, faithful movement. You reach a grove where trees lean close together, their branches woven like old hands holding tightly. The light filters through them in golden threads, and the air is filled with the sound of leaves, whispering secrets too old for words. In the center of the grove is a small clearing, a circle of grass worn smooth by years of presence. It feels familiar, though you cannot name why. Perhaps you sat here once, long ago, when the world still trembled beneath your feet. Or perhaps it is simply one of those places where God has walked before, and the earth remembers. You step into the clearing and sit, not out of weariness, but because it feels right. You let your eyes drift upward, watching the way the leaves dance in the breeze. Birds flutter from branch to branch, unbothered by your presence. A squirrel scurries along a branch, pausing to watch you with curious eyes before continuing its busy journey. You smile, the kind of smile that comes when you realize there is nothing you need to prove anymore. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. The wind, the leaves, the birds, the breath in your lungs, all come together like a prayer without words. You remember the cave again, the question that came to you twice, the answer you gave with trembling lips. I have been very zealous, you said. I alone am left. And even now, you remember the stillness that followed. Not a rebuke, not a correction, just presence. Just a voice that did not argue, but invited. And that is what you feel now. Not a conclusion, not a finality, but an invitation. To trust that you were never walking alone, that every step was witnessed, that every silence was filled, that even your hiding places were holy. You think of Elisha again, his hands steady as he picked up your cloak, his eyes filled with questions and quiet determination. You wonder where his journey took him after you were gone. Not just the miracles, not just the public moments, but the quiet ones. The days when the sky was empty and the people were stubborn and the voice of God seemed far away. You wonder how often he remembered you, how often he sat beneath trees like this one and listened for a whisper he could not explain. And then you think of the listener, the one who has walked with you through each step of this story. You picture them now, wherever they are, however they are sitting, or lying, or watching. You imagine the stillness around them, the way their heart beats a little slower now, the way their breath has softened. You think of their life, their own long journey, filled with valleys and peaks, with prayers and pauses, with nights of silence and mornings of hope. You want to say something to them, not to teach, not to explain, but to bless. You want them to know that their story matters, that the quiet acts of kindness, the brave decisions made without recognition, the faith carried like a flickering flame through the darkest nights, these things are not small, they are not overlooked, they are not forgotten. You want them to know that it is okay to feel tired, that even prophets collapsed under trees and asked to stop, that even the ones we call heroes once whispered, "I have had enough." You want them to know that God does not only speak in fire, that sometimes the most powerful voice comes in a breath, a breeze, a stillness that waits patiently for the heart to be ready. You want them to know that they are not alone, that the one who spoke to Elisha still speaks, that the one who fed him in the wilderness still provides, that the one who called him out of hiding still calls today. You want them to believe that the journey is not wasted, that every mile matters, that every moment carries purpose, even when it does not carry clarity. You want them to breathe deeply now, to let go of the fear, the pressure, the expectation, and to rest in the presence of the one who walks beside them. So you speak to them, not aloud, but with your spirit, with your story, with the thread of connection that runs through the centuries, through the silence, through the soul. You say, "You have done well. You say, you are loved. You say, you are not forgotten. You say, keep listening. You say, keep walking. You say, the fire is not gone, it has simply changed. You say, the whisper is still speaking. You say, God is here. The wind answers with a sigh, gentle and warm. The trees shift slightly, as if leaning closer. The sun begins its descent, brushing the grove in honey and gold. You stand slowly, hands resting at your sides, eyes filled with light. You turn once more to the path, knowing it does not end here, but bends, continues, invites, and with steady steps, you begin to walk, not toward fame, not toward fire, not toward answers, but toward presence, toward peace, toward God. Now that the journey has ended, let your breath slow. There is nothing more to carry tonight. No weight to hold up, no name to protect. Just your heart, still beating, still remembering, still hoping. You have walked through fire and silence, across dry lands and into foreign gates. You have tasted sorrow, held fragments of joy, and whispered prayers into the dark. And still, here you are. Close your eyes if they are not closed already. Feel the quiet settle around your shoulders like a familiar shawl, warm and worn and safe. Imagine the soft wind moving through the trees by the river, that gentle place where exiles sat and asked how to sing again. You know now that the answer was never in perfect words or in grand gestures, but in the steady rhythm of remembering who you are. Even far from home, even when you cannot see the way forward, you are still part of the story. Let your thoughts rest. Let your fears uncoil like threads laid gently aside. You are not running now. You are not hiding. You are simply here, wrapped in the presence of the one who never left. Picture a light, small and constant, flickering gently at the edge of the wilderness. It does not roar. It does not command. It invites. This is the fire that remains. This is the whisper that stays. And as you drift deeper into rest, may peace be your companion. May silence be your healing. May the God of Elijah walk beside you even in dreams. You have made it through the week. You have survived the wandering. And now, you are home.